You're about to plunge into the dark web's criminal underworld, where billionaires are born in the shadows and kingpins rule without a face. You will walk alongside the masterminds, men who outsmart governments, vanish without a trace, and amass fortunes in a heartbeat. But here's the chilling question. Could you survive in a world where one wrong move means life or death? Let's find out. Chapter 1. The Rise of the Silk Road. The Double Life of Ross Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht was not the kind of person you'd expect to find at the helm of the world's most infamous drug marketplace. Born and raised in Texas, he seemed like an average young man, driven by big dreams and ideals. He had a vision to change the world, one built on libertarian principles, where government interference was kept at a minimum and individuals could transact freely. But beneath this mild-mannered persona was a man who would soon transform into one of the most notorious figures in the dark web's history, Dread Pirate Roberts. Ulbricht's journey into the shadowy underworld of the internet began with his desire to create something revolutionary. In his mind, the market needed liberation, an unshackling from the chains of regulation and law enforcement. This belief wasn't born out of malice, but out of a genuine conviction that people should have the freedom to make their own choices, including buying and selling anything, without interference from authorities. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and Ulbricht's road was the Silk Road. In 2011, he launched the Silk Road, a hidden marketplace on the dark web where users could buy and sell illicit goods, mainly drugs, using Bitcoin to maintain anonymity. It was a bold and dangerous move, but it paid off quickly. The Silk Road became a bustling marketplace, a hub for everything illegal, from heroin to hacking tools. And at the top of it all was Ulbricht, operating under the moniker Dread Pirate Roberts, a name taken from the swashbuckling character in The Princess Bride, symbolizing not just anonymity, but the idea of a role that could be passed down to anyone, ensuring its legacy would live on even if the original operator was caught. But Ross Ulbricht wasn't just Dread Pirate Roberts. To his friends, family, and anyone who knew him in his everyday life, he was still the same thoughtful, quiet Ross, a man who loved hiking, reading, and discussing philosophy. He wasn't living in a mansion or flaunting his wealth. In fact, he lived modestly, quietly amassing a fortune of over $28 million in Bitcoin, while continuing to blend in as just another young man trying to make his way in the world. However, the weight of living a double life began to take its toll. By day, Ulbricht would meet with friends, have casual dinners, and talk about current events. By night, he was Dread Pirate Roberts, orchestrating deals with drug cartels and overseeing a global drug empire that stretched across borders and time zones. The contrast between the two personas could not have been starker. While Ross tried to maintain normalcy, his alter ego was becoming a feared and revered figure on the dark web, a digital kingpin who showed no mercy when it came to defending his empire. He even ordered hits on those who posed a threat to Silk Road's success, though none of the assassination plots were ever carried out. Despite the staggering amounts of money flowing through the Silk Road, Ulbricht remained remarkably low-key. He didn't buy flashy cars or expensive homes. To his neighbors, he was just a quiet guy who kept to himself. But behind the scenes, Ulbricht was balancing the books of $1 billion drug empire, while evading the authorities who were closing in on him. It was Ulbricht's belief in his own untouchability that would eventually be his undoing. The more success he experienced, the more confident he became that he was beyond the reach of law enforcement. After all, everything was encrypted, and Bitcoin was untraceable, or so he thought. His digital fortress seemed impenetrable, but the FBI was watching, meticulously piecing together clues. They monitored forums, hacked into servers, and began to identify weaknesses in Silk Road's otherwise tight security. And then, Ulbricht made a fatal mistake. On October 1st, 2013, he logged into his Silk Road admin account in the public setting of a San Francisco library. It was an uncharacteristic lapse in judgment for someone so cautious. With the world's most wanted digital criminal sitting in plain sight, hunched over his laptop, the FBI made their move. The arrest was a coordinated strike. Agents stormed the library and seized his computer before he could hit the kill switch. The moment Dread Pirate Roberts was taken down, the Silk Road crumbled. The FBI celebrated one of the biggest victories in their battle against the dark web, and the media exploded with the revelation that the man behind the world's largest illegal marketplace wasn't a hardened criminal with a history of violence, but a quiet, unassuming man in his 20s. Ulbricht's arrest marked the beginning of the end for the Silk Road, but it was also the start of a new era in the world of cybercrime. The Silk Road had demonstrated what was possible with anonymity, Bitcoin, and a libertarian vision taken to its extreme. It had shown the potential of a truly free market, one where no regulation, law enforcement, or moral compass could interfere. But it also highlighted the dangers that came with such freedom. As Ross Ulbricht sat in a courtroom, facing charges that would ultimately put him behind bars for life, he reflected on the consequences of his idealism. What started as a vision for economic freedom spiraled into a ruthless global drug empire. His descent from a hopeful young man with a dream to the feared, dread Pirate Roberts was complete, and the price for that transformation was more than he could have ever imagined. Ross Ulbricht would never again be a free man, but his story and the legacy of the Silk Road would live on in the dark corners of the internet where new kingpins waited to rise. Chapter 2: AlphaBay, Alexander Kayses and his billionaire fantasy. In the world of the dark web, anonymity is everything, but Alexander Kayses was never one to hide from his success. At just 25 years old, the Canadian computer had transformed AlphaBay, a dark web marketplace, into a billion-dollar empire. But unlike Ross Ulbricht, the elusive mastermind behind Silk Road, Kayses didn't shy away from his wealth. He flaunted it, embracing his role as AlphaBay's kingpin with a boldness that would eventually lead to his downfall. Born in Canada, Kayses had always been a tech prodigy, but his ambitions were far greater than simply working a 9-to-5 job. AlphaBay, launched in 2014, quickly became the largest marketplace for illegal drugs, weapons, counterfeit goods, and stolen identities. In just a few years, it dwarfed the Silk Road in size and scope, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency transactions. Behind it all was Kayses, who reveled in the fruits of his illegal labor. Kayses didn't just run AlphaBay, he owned his new life. While Ulbricht had hidden behind a screen of idealism, Kayses embraced the role of a dark web billionaire with swagger. He lived like a king in Thailand, where he owned multiple villas, each more opulent than the last. His garage was lined with exotic cars, Lamborghinis, Porsches, and McLarens gleaming under the tropical sun. His wrist was heavy with luxury watches, and his bank accounts, both digital and traditional, brimmed with the spoils of his empire. By 2017, Kayses had amassed a fortune estimated at over $1 billion, much of it in Bitcoin, which he meticulously tracked in spreadsheets. Thailand became his playground. He and his wife, a local beauty queen, traveled the country in style, hopping between luxury resorts and exclusive parties. Kayses was young, rich, and untouchable, or so he thought. His arrogance was growing in tandem with his wealth. He wasn't just a shadowy figure on the internet anymore. He was living out the fantasies of a rock star with all the trappings of excess that came with it. But with every Lamborghini he purchased, every mansion he added to his portfolio, Kayses drew more attention. Authorities around the world were beginning to notice the young Canadian whose opulence seemed out of place for a tech entrepreneur. Despite his vast empire and incredible wealth, Kayses made one crucial error, a single misstep that would unravel his billion-dollar dream. For all his technical brilliance, Kayses overlooked a seemingly small detail, the email address. In one of AlphaBay's welcome messages, he used his personal email, a mundane mistake in the grand scheme of things, but one that would lead law enforcement straight to him. The FBI and Europol were already on his trail, but this slip gave them the piece of the puzzle they needed to locate the mastermind behind the world's largest illegal marketplace. The authorities moved swiftly. They traced Kayses to Thailand, where he had been living a life of unimaginable luxury. But despite his flashy lifestyle, Kayses had no idea that his empire was crumbling around him. Law enforcement agencies across the globe had coordinated a simultaneous takedown of AlphaBay. Servers were seized, transactions were frozen, and buyers and sellers on the site were left in the dark, wondering what had happened to the platform that had been a pillar of the dark web. Then, in July 2017, the noose tightened. In a dramatic SWAT-style raid, Thai police stormed Kaze's sprawling luxury villa in Bangkok. The scene was straight out of a movie. Armed officers surrounding the property, kicking down doors, and cornering Kaze's as he tried, in vain, to shut down his computer and erase evidence. But it was too late. Authorities had caught him red-handed, with his laptop open and logged into AlphaBay as the administrator. The arrest was a victory for law enforcement, but for Kaze's, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Within days of his capture, AlphaBay's collapse sent shockwaves through the dark web community. The empire he had built was gone, and now, Kaze's was left facing charges that would land him in prison for life. His billion-dollar fantasy had come crashing down, but the story didn't end with the arrest. Just a few days later, on July 12, 2017, Kaze's was found dead in his jail cell. The official report claimed it was suicide. He had hanged himself using a towel. But for many, the circumstances surrounding his death seemed too convenient, too sudden. Kaze's was a man who had built an empire from nothing, who had lived his life in defiance of the law and seemed unbreakable even in the face of capture. His unexpected death left a trail of unanswered questions and fueled rumors of foul play. Was it really suicide? Had he been silenced to keep him from revealing more about the inner workings of AlphaBay and the criminal networks that thrived on it? Or had the stress of losing his empire driven him to take his own life in a moment of despair? These questions lingered, but one thing was clear. Alexander Kaze's rise and fall had been as meteoric as it was tragic. In the aftermath of his death, investigators uncovered the extent of his wealth, luxury properties, sports cars, and a staggering amount of cryptocurrency that remained locked in various accounts. But the digital treasure trove Kaze's had accumulated was out of reach, protected by encryption keys that died with him. The billions he had hoarded in the shadows were now as untouchable as the man who had once controlled them. Kaze's story became a cautionary tale in the world of cybercrime, a reminder that even the most brilliant masterminds could make simple mistakes. His life was a fantasy realized through crime, a billionaire dream that had come true for a brief moment. But in the end, it was all fleeting. AlphaBay, the empire he had built with his bare hands, was gone, and so was Kaze's, leaving behind only the echoes of his extravagant rise and the mystery of his sudden demise. Chapter 3: The Dream Market Mirage, the enigmatic life of Speed Stepper. When AlphaBay collapsed in a blaze of arrests and controversy, the dark web was left in disarray. Its users, accustomed to the vast marketplace of drugs, weapons, and stolen identities, suddenly found themselves adrift. Enter Dream Market. Rising from the ashes of AlphaBay, Dream Market quickly became the new king of the dark web. But unlike its predecessors, it was run by a ghost, a shadowy figure known only as Speed Stepper. While Alexander Kaze's of AlphaBay had reveled in his wealth, flashing his luxury cars and villas, Speed Stepper was the opposite. Little was known about him. His personality remained elusive, a whisper on the forums where Dream Market's users gathered. He was cautious, methodical, and quietly powerful. While previous dark web kingpins had basked in their digital notoriety, Speed Stepper shunned the spotlight. He was a mystery, lurking behind layers of encryption, anonymity, and misdirection. In the world of the dark web, where paranoia reigns, Speed Stepper's low-key approach proved to be his greatest asset. Users knew that Dream Market was as robust as AlphaBay, but its operator kept a far lower profile. There were no Lamborghini photos or exotic getaways linked to Speed Stepper. Rumors spread about his immense wealth. Some claimed he had amassed tens of millions of dollars in Bitcoin. But unlike other dark web lords, Speed Stepper didn't flaunt his fortune. He operated with a cold precision, distancing himself from the mistakes of those before him. Dream Market's rise to dominance was swift. As the go-to marketplace for illicit goods, it filled the vacuum left by AlphaBay's demise. Buyers flocked to the site, lured by its reputation for stability and security. Sellers praised its user interface and customer support. Transactions flowed smoothly, and the marketplace grew larger with each passing month. Speed Stepper, from behind his veil of secrecy, watched his empire thrive. His presence, though unseen, was felt in every corner of the dark web. Yet, even as Dream Market flourished, authorities were already plotting their next move. By 2019, law enforcement agencies had Dream Market in their sights. After years of watching major dark web markets rise and fall, they had developed new tools and techniques to track down operators like Speedstepper. Undercover agents infiltrated the marketplace, posing as buyers and sellers, gathering evidence, tracing cryptocurrency transactions, and building a case. But Speedstepper's elusive nature made him a challenging target. He didn't leave a digital footprint. He avoided the flashy mistakes of his predecessors, keeping a tight grip on Dream Market while maintaining a life of complete anonymity. Theories about his identity abounded in the dark corners of the web. Some speculated that Speedstepper was a former Silk Road administrator who had learned from the failures of the past. Others believed he was a group of individuals working under the same alias, each playing a part in running the marketplace. Regardless of the speculation, one thing was certain. Speedstepper was growing rich beyond imagination, quietly hoarding a fortune in cryptocurrency while staying one step ahead of the authorities. But like all dark web empires, Dream Market's success could not last forever. In early 2019, rumors began circulating that law enforcement was closing in on the marketplace. Users noticed that Dream Market was behaving oddly. Transactions were delayed, communication with administrators became sporadic, and whispers of an impending shutdown began to spread like wildfire. Then, in March 2019, the announcement came: Dream Market would be shutting down. Users were advised to withdraw their funds, as the marketplace would soon be offline. Panic ensued. Buyers and sellers scrambled to retrieve their Bitcoin, fearful that the end was near. But as the clock ticked down to the closure, something strange happened. Dream Market went dark, suddenly and without warning. One day, the site was there, bustling with activity, and the next it was gone. The shutdown was abrupt, with no explanation, no parting words from Speedstepper. Millions of dollars in cryptocurrency vanished along with the marketplace. It was as if Dream Market had never existed. For the dark web community, it was the perfect crime, an exit scam. Speedstepper, the enigmatic figure who had built Dream Market into the largest marketplace in the world, had pulled off a masterstroke. In one fell swoop, he had shut down his empire, taking with him a fortune in cryptocurrency. Buyers and sellers were left stranded, their Bitcoin frozen in accounts they could no longer access. The dark web buzzed with anger, frustration, and disbelief. Authorities, too, were caught off guard. After months of preparing to strike, they found themselves chasing a ghost. Speedstepper had vanished without a trace. He left no digital breadcrumbs, no clues to his identity or whereabouts. He simply disappeared into the ether, taking with him millions in ill-gotten gains. It was the ultimate disappearing act, one that left law enforcement agencies scrambling to figure out what had happened. Speculation ran rampant. Had Speedstepper fled to a tropical island, living off his Bitcoin fortune in luxury? Was he hiding out in Europe or South America, continuing to operate other dark web ventures under different aliases? Or was he simply a mirage, a construct of multiple people who had conspired to run Dream Market and then disappeared once they had enough? Theories were endless, but answers were few. In the aftermath of the exit scam, Dream Market's users were left with a bitter taste. Many had trusted the marketplace, believing it was immune to the pitfalls that had taken down its predecessors. But Speedstepper had proven, once again, that in the world of the dark web, nothing is as it seems. Trust is fragile, and empires built on crime can crumble overnight. As the dust settled, law enforcement agencies around the world intensified their efforts to track down the elusive kingpin. But Speedstepper was a ghost, an enigma who had played the long game and won. For now, he remains out there, somewhere, his true identity hidden behind layers of encryption, living off the millions he siphoned from his own creation. Dream Market's disappearance marked the end of an era, but it also solidified Speedstepper's legend. In the dark web's chaotic world, where risk and reward are intertwined, he had done the unthinkable, built an empire, cashed out, and vanished into the shadows, leaving behind nothing but rumors and an empty void where Dream Market once stood. Chapter 4: Wall Street Market, the Young Millionaire Ring. Wall Street Market didn't rise with the fanfare of its predecessors. It appeared quietly, like a shadow slipping into the dark web after the fall of AlphaBay and Dream Market. It wasn't run by an infamous kingpin like Ross Ulbricht or a faceless enigma like Speed Stepper. Instead, behind Wall Street Market were three unassuming young men from Germany, friends who shared a vision, not of revolution or grandeur, but of cold, hard cash. Their names were Thibaut, Jonathan, and Klaus, ordinary names for what seemed like ordinary lives. By day, they held down jobs, blending into the fabric of society like any other 20-something. They attended classes, worked in IT, or labored away in offices. But by night, they logged into Wall Street Market, where they presided over one of the largest black market empires ever seen on the dark web. Drugs, weapons, stolen identities, hacking services, anything illegal that could be traded was up for sale on their platform. What had started as a small-time side hustle quickly exploded into a multi-million-dollar operation. Unlike their predecessors, the trio didn't fall into the trap of seeking fame or notoriety. They operated under the radar, keeping their true identities hidden even from each other, communicating only through encrypted channels. On the surface, they seemed normal, young men navigating early adulthood, building careers, dating, enjoying the spoils of youth. But behind closed doors, they were raking in millions, turning Wall Street Market into a powerhouse of illegal commerce. As the marketplace grew, so did their wealth. The trio initially lived modestly, perhaps too paranoid to draw attention to themselves. But soon, the allure of their digital fortune became impossible to resist. Klaus, the quietest of the three, was the first to indulge. He bought a sleek BMW, the kind that roared down the Autobahn, its luxury unmistakable. Jonathan, known for his flair and love of tech, filled his apartment with the latest gadgets, high-end gaming rigs, virtual reality setups, and a wall of flat screens that could rival any command center. Thibaut, the mastermind behind Wall Street Market's coding, couldn't help but splurge on high-end watches and designer suits, the kind that made him look like a young tech entrepreneur on the verge of a billion-dollar startup. But with every luxury purchase, with every flashy car or expensive gadget, they unknowingly pulled themselves closer to the edge of exposure. Law enforcement agencies, already on the lookout for new dark web markets, had begun tracking their activities. The trio was good, very good at covering their tracks. They used complex encryption, anonymous accounts, and a rotating cast of servers to stay hidden. But they couldn't hide everything. Their growing wealth and spending habits started to form a trail, one that investigators were eager to follow. As the months passed, the stress of their double lives began to take a toll. By day, they were just three friends navigating the normal stresses of young adulthood, student loans, relationships, and the 9-to-5 grind. By night, they were operating a global criminal empire, always wondering if each transaction, each login, might be their last. They became increasingly paranoid, constantly looking over their shoulders, scanning for signs of law enforcement surveillance. Yet, despite their fears, the allure of wealth kept them pushing forward, each day amassing more Bitcoin, each transaction bringing in millions more. It was their downfall. The more money they made, the bolder they became. Soon, Wall Street Market was generating so much income that hiding it became nearly impossible. The trio tried laundering their Bitcoin through a complex web of crypto wallets, offshore accounts, and shell companies. But the system was imperfect, and the digital fingerprints of their illegal fortune began to surface. German authorities were closing in. Unbeknownst to them, the trio had been under surveillance for months. Undercover agents had infiltrated Wall Street Market, posing as buyers and sellers, slowly gathering information and piecing together the real identities behind the anonymous marketplace. Each transaction, each message, left breadcrumbs that investigators carefully followed. And then, one fateful day, the authorities pounced. In a sting operation coordinated between international law enforcement agencies and German police, the three young men were arrested simultaneously. It was a flawless operation. Police swarmed their apartments and workplaces, seizing computers, crypto wallets, luxury cars, and electronic devices. The trio was caught completely off guard. One moment, they were living their high-tech dream. The next, they were in handcuffs, their empire crumbling around them. As the news of their arrest broke, the dark web was left reeling. Wall Street Market had been one of the most robust and reliable platforms, a cornerstone of the digital underworld. Its collapse sent shockwaves through the community, and with it came the stunning revelation. The masterminds behind the market weren't seasoned criminals or shadowy figures from the black market's underbelly. They were three young men, barely out of their 20s, who had amassed millions in Bitcoin and were living double lives as both ordinary citizens and criminal masterminds. The fallout was immediate. Wall Street Market's closure stranded thousands of users, leaving countless illegal transactions in limbo. Sellers lost fortunes, buyers were left without their goods, and the digital marketplace that had promised anonymity and security was exposed as vulnerable to law enforcement's growing reach. The trio's arrest was a sobering reminder that, no matter how careful or encrypted, the dark web was not invincible. The young millionaires had flown too close to the sun, and now their empire was gone, destroyed in a single sweep. For Thibaut, Jonathan, and Klaus, what began as a business venture among friends ended in disaster. Their millions were seized, their assets confiscated, and their futures reduced to courtrooms and prison cells. But for the dark web community, their story was more than just a cautionary tale. It was a reminder of how quickly fortunes could be built and lost in the underworld, a world where anonymity is king, and a single mistake can bring down even the mightiest empires. Chapter 5, Empire Market, the Mysterious Architect. In the murky world of the dark web, where digital empires rise and fall like flickering shadows, Empire Market stood out as a giant. After the dramatic collapse of Wall Street Market, the void left behind was immense. Buyers and sellers, left stranded and exposed, were desperate for a new haven, a place where transactions could flow, goods could be exchanged, and anonymity could still be protected. Into this chaos stepped the architect, a mysterious figure who would go on to rule one of the longest-standing and most successful dark web marketplaces in history. From the very beginning, the architect operated in silence. No one knew their true identity, whether they were an individual or a collective. While previous dark web leaders like Ross Ulbricht and Alexander Kazes had allowed glimpses of their personal lives to bleed into their digital personas, the architect was a ghost. Empire Market emerged quietly, without fanfare or any grand declaration of intent. It simply appeared, its sleek interface and robust security measures attracting droves of users eager to rebuild their fortunes after the fall of the other markets. Unlike its predecessors, Empire Market didn't just fill the gap, it thrived. At its height, it handled billions in illegal transactions, ranging from drugs to weapons, forged documents, hacking tools, and more. Its security measures were tight, with sophisticated encryption protocols and multi-layered anonymity techniques. While other marketplaces had been brought down by small operational flaws, personal emails, sloppy spending, or poor security, Empire Market seemed impenetrable. It was an oasis in the wild west of the dark web, a place where illicit business could be conducted with a sense of relative safety. Yet, despite its success, the man or woman behind it remained a complete enigma. The architect kept to the shadows, interacting with users only through impersonal announcements and cryptic messages. There were no flamboyant displays of wealth, no extravagant lifestyles on display like Kay's Lamborghinis or Ulbricht's ideological rants. The architect was a phantom, and this made Empire Market even more formidable. Rumors swirled about the architect's true identity. Some said he was a disgruntled former hacker, an exile from the traditional tech industry who had found a way to make his fortune in the underworld. Others whispered that he was an international crime lord, sitting atop a pyramid of power and influence that extended far beyond the dark web. There were stories of secret luxury, of sprawling estates hidden in remote locations, of yachts that cruised the Mediterranean while billions flowed silently into anonymous accounts. But these were just stories. No one knew the truth. Law enforcement, too, was baffled. After successfully bringing down the Silk Road and AlphaBay, they were eager to claim another victory. But the architect eluded them at every turn. Despite their best efforts, they found no weak points in Empire Market's defenses, no careless mistakes that could lead them to the person or group behind it. The architect had studied the failures of his predecessors and learned from them. He, or they, operated with a level of precision and caution that kept even the most dogged investigators at bay. And so, Empire Market continued to grow. Month after month, year after year, it became the cornerstone of the dark web, outlasting many of its rivals. The transactions it facilitated were staggering in scale. Cryptocurrency poured in from every corner of the globe, and with each successful sale, the architect's fortune grew larger. Users spoke of the architect with a mix of reverence and fear. In an ecosystem where betrayal and deceit were rampant, the architect's iron-fisted control of the marketplace brought a strange kind of stability. He was a ruler without a face, an overlord of the unseen. But all empires, no matter how carefully built, are vulnerable to collapse. One night, without warning, Empire Market went dark. Users attempting to access the site were met with nothing but silence. No error messages, no cryptic announcements, just a sudden and complete vanishing act. Panic set in across the dark web. Buyers were left without their goods, sellers without their payments, and a vast number of cryptocurrency transactions hung in limbo. It was as if a black hole had swallowed the marketplace whole, taking with it the hopes and fortunes of thousands. The disappearance of Empire Market left more than just chaos in its wake. It also left behind the mystery of the architect's final move. Reports soon surfaced that the architect had vanished with over $30 million in cryptocurrency. Whether this was an orchestrated exit scam or a sudden decision to abandon the empire remained unclear. What was certain, however, was that the architect had vanished as completely as he had operated, without a trace. Speculation ran wild. Had law enforcement finally gotten too close, forcing the architect to pull the plug? Had internal strife or betrayal caused the market's downfall? Or had the architect simply decided that his time as king of the dark web had come to an end, opting to disappear with a fortune into permanent anonymity? For those left in the wreckage, the questions were endless. Authorities scrambled to find leads, but the architect had covered his tracks meticulously. Every potential thread of evidence led to dead ends. There were whispers that law enforcement had identified potential suspects, but nothing concrete ever surfaced. Some speculated that the architect was living off his fortune in a remote, luxurious hideaway, while others believed he was still lurking in the shadows, perhaps waiting to resurface under a new alias and build another empire. The mystery of the architect's identity continues to baffle investigators and dark web enthusiasts alike. Unlike other dark web kingpins who met their downfall in a blaze of law enforcement glory, the architect disappeared without so much as a final word. He, or they, might still be out there, watching as new marketplaces rise and fall, profiting from the chaos that inevitably follows in the dark web's dangerous and unpredictable ecosystem. As law enforcement continues to hunt for the next big player in the dark web, one question lingers in the shadows. Is the architect truly gone? Or is this just the beginning of another chapter in the dark web's ever-evolving saga? Chapter 6. Russian Hydra, the opulent Russian cyberlords. In the shadowy world of the dark web, Hydra Market stands apart. Unlike its predecessors, Silk Road, AlphaBay, and Dream Market, Hydra is distinctly Russian in its focus, catering to a clientele from Russia and Eastern Europe. Its rise marked a new era in dark web operations, where sophistication and ruthlessness were intertwined in ways the world had never seen. Hydra wasn't just another marketplace. It was a digital fortress built on connections to some of the most dangerous criminal syndicates in the world. Founded in 2015, Hydra quickly grew into the largest and most secure dark web market in history. Its interface was slick, its security protocols virtually impenetrable, and its structure meticulously designed to avoid the pitfalls that had brought down other dark web giants. Hydra operated like a corporate empire, its reach extending far beyond drugs. It facilitated the sale of counterfeit documents, illegal weapons, hacking services, and more. But what truly set Hydra apart was its focus on Russia and the post-Soviet states. It was a marketplace created by Russians for Russians with the kind of criminal infrastructure that no Western marketplace could match. Hydra's top operatives were not mere hackers or libertarian idealists, but seasoned cyberlords with deep ties to organized crime. These weren't the faceless digital masterminds who lurked in dark corners of the internet. Hydra's leaders lived like kings. They moved through the corridors of power, rubbing shoulders with oligarchs and gangsters alike. With access to vast resources, they indulged in lifestyles that rivaled the wealthiest elites in Russia. Mansions in Moscow, luxury cars, private jets. Hydra's top operatives enjoyed every excess that their fortunes could buy. Their wealth was staggering. Hydra's revenue far outpaced that of any other dark web marketplace, reportedly exceeding hundreds of millions of dollars a year. By 2020, it was estimated that Hydra had processed over $1.5 billion in cryptocurrency transactions. This incredible financial success allowed its leaders to operate with impunity, amassing fortunes that most could only dream of. Bitcoin flowed through their accounts like water, funding extravagant lifestyles that were as opulent as they were untouchable. Lavish estates in secluded areas of Russia became the norm, where parties raged into the early hours, fueled by endless supplies of cash and contraband. But Hydra's success wasn't just built on luxury and excess. Its leaders had a ruthless efficiency that made the marketplace nearly invincible. Hydra's structure was unlike anything seen before in the dark web. While Western dark web markets often operated on a decentralized model, Hydra had an ironclad, hierarchical structure. Its vendors were tightly controlled, and transactions were carefully monitored. Hydra's most innovative feature, however, was its system of dead drops, a method that allowed users to purchase drugs and pick them up from secret locations without ever meeting the seller in person. This system of dead drops made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to track transactions or arrest dealers. Even if a buyer was caught, they had no way of identifying their supplier. This level of operational security, coupled with Hydra's ties to Russian organized crime, made it one of the most resilient dark web markets in existence. The cyberlords behind Hydra weren't just anonymous hackers hiding behind screens. They were powerful figures with connections to the Russian underworld and allegedly, even the government. It was whispered that Hydra operated with the tacit approval of Russian authorities, who turned a blind eye to the market's operations in exchange for a cut of the profits, or, at the very least, political leverage. This made Hydra nearly untouchable. While Western law enforcement agencies celebrated takedowns of dark web markets like Silk Road and AlphaBay, Hydra continued to operate with little interference. The power that Hydra's leaders wielded was terrifying. They weren't just running a dark web market, they were running an empire. Their control extended beyond the digital world, with tentacles reaching into the physical realm. Organized crime groups used Hydra to launder money, smuggle weapons, and sell drugs at a scale that dwarfed even the most ambitious Western dark web markets. Hydra wasn't just a marketplace, it was a criminal ecosystem, sustained by a complex network of suppliers, buyers, and enforcers. Yet, despite its immense power, Hydra remained shrouded in secrecy. The identities of its leaders were closely guarded, known only to those in the highest echelons of Russian organized crime. While law enforcement agencies across the globe worked tirelessly to dismantle the dark web, Hydra operated with an air of invincibility. Western intelligence agencies were aware of Hydra's existence, but there was little they could do. The market servers were hidden behind layers of encryption, and its leaders were protected by the corrupt and powerful. And so Hydra thrived, growing larger with each passing year. Even as other dark web markets fell, Hydra remained standing, a towering giant in a landscape of crumbled empires. Its leaders reveled in their success, living in a world of unimaginable wealth and influence. They had turned the dark web into a playground where drugs, weapons, and illicit services were just a few clicks away. Hydra had become more than just a market. It was a symbol of the power and resilience of Russian cybercrime. But every empire no matter how strong, has its vulnerabilities. As Hydra's reputation grew, so too did the efforts to bring it down. International law enforcement agencies, frustrated by their inability to penetrate Hydra's defenses, began to focus their efforts on the individuals behind the marketplace. The wealth and power of Hydra's leaders, once their greatest asset, became a liability. Investigators started to track the lavish spending of Hydra's top operatives. Luxury cars, mansions, and private planes all left trails that could be followed. Still, Hydra's leaders remained elusive. They moved through the shadows, protected by layers of corruption and fear. The Russian government, allegedly complicit in Hydra's operations, refused to cooperate with Western law enforcement, making it nearly impossible to bring the marketplace down. Hydra continued to operate, raking in billions, while its leaders lived in opulence, seemingly untouchable. As the world watches, Hydra endures, a fortress in the dark web, an empire ruled by Russian cyberlords whose wealth and power are matched only by their anonymity. The market's resilience is legendary, its leaders untouchable. But with every empire comes the risk of collapse, and even Hydra's reign may someday meet its end. For now, though, it remains the crown jewel of the dark web, a kingdom of shadows, ruled by unseen hands. Chapter 7. The Unending Hunt, New Kingpins, and the Future of the Dark Web. The fall of empires on the dark web is a familiar story. Silk Road, AlphaBay, Dream Market, each of these underground kingdoms once reigned supreme, only to crumble when law enforcement closed in. Ross Ulbricht, Alexander Cases, Speed Stepper, all are names now synonymous with spectacular rise and fall. And yet, as their empires lay in ruins and their lives ended in prisons or mysterious deaths, the dark web itself remains as elusive and resilient as ever. For every takedown, two new marketplaces seem to spring up, each more refined than the last, learning from the failures of their predecessors. The dark web is a hydra, and with each head cut off, more emerge, stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. As law enforcement agencies across the world celebrated the closure of these infamous markets, they began to realize that their victories were temporary. A new generation of kingpins was rising from the ashes. These operators studied the mistakes of those who had come before, adapting and refining their operations with chilling precision. The dark web was evolving, and its newest rulers were more sophisticated than ever. The legends of Ross Ulbricht and Alexander Cases have become the stuff of dark web lore. Their stories are cautionary tales, but they are also blueprints for a new breed of kingpins who have learned to survive in a hostile environment. These modern-day operators know the risks and are constantly innovating to stay ahead of the game. The mistakes that led to the downfall of Silk Road and AlphaBay, sloppy operational security, overconfidence, and the desire for fame, have become lessons in how not to run a dark web empire. No longer do dark web operators flaunt their wealth openly, nor do they let personal email addresses or careless logins be their undoing. The new kings of the dark web are ghosts. They operate with surgical precision, leaving no trace of their real identities. Their empires are vast, their fortunes enormous, but their existence is a whisper, a shadow in the digital void. Today's dark web kingpins are masters of deception. They've learned how to live in luxury while staying hidden in plain sight. Offshore bank accounts, shell companies, and intricate cryptocurrency laundering techniques allow them to move their illicit profits without detection. They buy mansions in distant countries under fake names, drive luxury cars registered to ghost companies, and store their wealth in art, gold, and cryptocurrency. Rumors swirl about these elusive figures. Whispers of hidden villas in the Swiss Alps, private islands in the Caribbean, and secret bunkers stocked with millions in Bitcoin. These kingpins lead lives of opulence, but unlike their predecessors, they keep their fortunes well guarded, far from the prying eyes of law enforcement. They have mastered the art of blending in, posing as everyday entrepreneurs, digital nomads, or tech investors. But behind the facade lies a criminal empire that spans continents and moves billions. One such figure, known only by the pseudonym Black Hand, is rumored to run the largest dark web marketplace since the collapse of Empire Market. Black Hand's identity remains unknown, but whispers of his vast fortune are common in criminal circles. It's said he operates from a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean, constantly on the move, using offshore satellites for communication and a network of trusted lieutenants to manage his empire. His wealth is estimated in the hundreds of millions, but he lives by one simple rule: stay in the shadows. The days of being a public figure, as Ross Ulbricht once was, are long gone. The new dark web rulers are invisible, their identities buried under layers of encryption and misdirection. They communicate only through secure channels, use burner devices for every transaction, and never linger in one place for long. They've learned that visibility equals vulnerability. The dark web's new generation of operators have also adapted technologically. Cryptocurrency laundering has become an art form, with tumblers and mixing services making it nearly impossible to trace transactions. These services scramble and redistribute Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Monero across countless wallets, leaving law enforcement chasing phantoms. The digital trail is buried so deeply that even the most advanced blockchain analysis tools struggle to uncover the true path of the money. Not only have the laundering methods become more advanced, but the marketplaces themselves are more decentralized. Unlike Silk Road or AlphaBay, which relied on centralized servers that could be raided, new dark web markets are hosted on peer-to-peer networks. These platforms operate without a single point of failure, making them nearly impossible to shut down. Even if authorities manage to take down part of the network, the rest remains operational, ready to continue the illicit trade of drugs, weapons, and counterfeit goods. The Kingpins have also diversified their business models. No longer relying solely on drug sales, today's dark web marketplaces offer a dizzying array of illegal services. From cybercriminals for hire, to data breaches sold to the highest bidder, to hitmen services, the dark web has evolved into a global black market for everything forbidden. And as these markets diversify, the operators grow even wealthier, their influence spreading across multiple industries. For every victory law enforcement achieves, the dark web counters with two new innovations. It's a war of attrition, and the battleground is constantly shifting. Global law enforcement agencies have made strides in cracking down on dark web marketplaces, employing cutting-edge technology and blockchain analytics to trace transactions and identify users. But just as quickly as they advance, the dark web adapts. In response, authorities have begun using new techniques to infiltrate these shadowy empires. Undercover agents now pose as vendors or buyers, painstakingly building trust within the dark web community before pulling off massive stings. Cybercrime units are employing AI-driven analysis tools to track patterns and hunt down vulnerabilities in encryption protocols. The hunt has grown more sophisticated, but so too have the hunted. And still, the Hydra persists. Each marketplace that falls is soon replaced by another, and the kingpins behind them continue to grow richer, smarter, and harder to catch. The dark web, like a living entity, adapts to survive. It sheds its old skin, emerging stronger and more resilient with every blow. As authorities around the world push harder, the dark web's empire of shadows only deepens. New faces emerge, new empires rise, and the game of cat and mouse continues. The war is far from over, and the hunt never ends. The kingpins may fall, but the dark web remains. Always watching, always waiting,